A new report by the city's Department of Investigation finds that a correction officer violated sanctuary laws by providing details to federal immigration authorities about two undocumented immigrants being held in city jails. The officer's actions led to the arrest of one of the detainees. The report found that the officer, quote, unwittingly breached the law because they had not been properly trained on when and how to share information with federal authorities. In response, the report recommended a number of changes to the Department of Correction in order to prevent another violation. Joining me now to talk about this report and much more is Jocelyn Strauber, the Commissioner of the Department of Investigation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with just how did this investigation come together and how did you come to know that there may have been an issue here?
Well, it came to us in the way many investigations do, which is that we received a complaint. We received numerous complaints over the course of a year from members of the public. And when we get those complaints, we commence an investigation as we did here. Here, the complaint was that an investigator with the Department of Correction had assisted ICE in the arrest of individuals. And so we took a look at that and we did substantiate the complaint and find that impermissible assistance was provided.
And in reading through the report, the person who was arrested, it seems that shortly after they were released from Rikers Island, did this officer follow them? How were they apprehended by ICE? Tell me a little bit more about what that cooperation ultimately looked like.
That's correct. Well, first of all, the officer provided information to ICE about the person's custody status. That's not permitted under the city's sanctuary city laws. He directed that the individual be held at Rikers for a little bit of additional time until he could be there to surveil the individual as he left Rikers Island. He provided information essentially in real time to immigration and customs enforcement agents who subsequently apprehended the individual after he had left Rikers Island.
And the person who was apprehended, they became posted on social media by the White House.
That is our understanding. This was someone who was arrested not in a federal criminal case, but arrested for purposes of immigration enforcement and who we believe was ultimately deported.
What have you learned about what training was like on Rikers Island regarding when an officer can or cannot cooperate with federal immigration authorities? What was the training like before this investigation?
There was really no training to speak of at this time. There was a directive from 2019 that did make clear that corrections officers could not assist in civil immigration enforcement, but did not really make clear what that actually meant. So this officer, who like a number of officers at DOC is part of a federal task force, was used to working with federal agents, understood that he might get requests for information, and that he could legitimately respond to those requests, again, in furtherance of federal criminal investigations. What he wasn't told or taught was that in the current environment, where ICE is ramping up its activities in New York City, he should be asking the officers reaching out to him to make sure that what he was working on was legitimately a federal criminal investigation and not civil immigration enforcement. That didn't happen here. He assumed that he was assisting in a federal criminal case when in fact he was not.
The mayor was asked about this report and he characterized it as what ultimately happened here, a human mistake. Is that how you see this?
I really see this as a failure of guidance and training. Of course, the officer made a mistake in the sense that he didn't realize he was assisting with immigration enforcement. But the reason he didn't realize that is he wasn't given the tools to determine how to do his job in accordance with sanctuary city law. And I think that's really what the report shows.
Walk me through some of the policy recommendations the department is now put forward to the Department of Correction in the wake of this investigation and report.
Well, most importantly is enhanced training to the officers who regularly deal with federal agents. And in fact, as soon as we realized what had happened here, we reached out to the Department of Correction. This was months ago. We informed them of the issues so that they could begin providing additional training. And it's our understanding that they have done that, and that they'll continue to look for opportunities to do that. Another recommendation that we made was that an audit be conducted to determine whether there were other incidents like this. We did a limited email review, and we identified at least one other officer who likely impermissibly shared information, but it really is for the Department of Correction to assure that this isn't happening in a more widespread way. Now, their response to that recommendation was that that wasn't feasible and practical given the resources they have, but it was something that we recommended as well.
I know this probe focused on the Department of Correction, but any indication that there may be issues in other city departments when it comes to training of city employees in terms of what can or cannot be done when it comes to the city sanctuary laws?
Well, one thing that we're looking at after receiving a referral from the City Council is the question of how the NYPD works with federal agents, like the Department of Correction, like our agency. Many city employees are part of federal task forces. And so we're looking at the request of the City Council to make sure that the NYPD is providing proper training and ensuring that the assistance provided is consistent with sanctuary city law and doesn't go beyond it. And I expect that we'll be issuing a report on our findings in that investigation later this year.
How long did this investigation take from the moment you received a tip to the moment when you were able to put out a report and these recommendations?
It's a good question. We began looking at this, I believe, much earlier in the year, maybe beginning of the year, February, and we were able to issue the report, as you know, just last week.
And for people who are unfamiliar with how DOI investigations work, what type of resources do you use? What goes into building a case like this?
Well, every case is different, but in this case, we have access to emails of city employees. So we were looking at emails to see what communications might have been undertaken to facilitate this assistance to immigration enforcement. We looked at video from various points at Rikers Island. It showed, for example, the person in custody getting on the bus to leave the island. It showed the surveillance that the corrections investigator was conducting inside a black van. And we conduct interviews of city employees, and we spoke here in particular with the investigator in question.
I want to ask you about a separate investigation into deaths in NYPD custody. Just this year, there have been 9 deaths, last year 25, and in 2023, there were 18 deaths. I know this investigation is still underway, but what can you tell us so far?
I mean, what I can tell you is that we've begun an investigation. We got a referral and a request to look at it, not only from the Legal Aid Society, but we've also been closely following the media reports on this issue. It's obviously a significant one. And so we've opened an investigation that's in its early stages. And given the way we do our work and the sort of thorough process that we undertake before we issue findings, I can't really tell you more than that at this point.
All right, well, we appreciate what you have been able to share, and thank you so much for joining us this evening, Commissioner.